I'd particularly like to welcome Ian, but what I'm going to do is we're going to whip around the room. There's quite a few people here, so if we can be really, really succinct, but it is good to just hear who's on the call and where you are in the world, and very, very briefly what it is that you speak about. I'd really appreciate that. And if you know how this works, you just need to kind of hover down the bottom of your screen. You'll find the mute, unmute button. So unmute so that we can hear you, introduce yourself, and then just tell us your information. We still have some more people checking in, but that's fine. I'm going to start with Chris Voisey, who's up at the top of my screen. Chris, if you could just turn your screen on. Introduce yourself, please.
Unmuted now, Charlotte.
Good.
Am I on? Hi. Okay, so I'm Chris Voisey. I'm living in Cape Town, and I speak on communication. I have a couple of talks. One is called Finding Your Voice, and the other is called Up Yours, which has to do with upping your game in relation to communication. That's
very
me.
Good. Thank you, Chris. And Nigel.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So my name is Nigel Smith. I am in Pretoria. One of, I think, the longest serving PSA members in and around Pretoria, but one of the quietest. So I think for the first time, hello everyone.
Hi, Nigel.
I speak and lecture on, there we go, Chris, how's it? On strategy, strategic thinking, leadership, innovation, and a few of the other soft skills. But yeah, that's good enough. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nigel. Roger. Roger, can you unmute yourself?
That's a good idea. Have you heard all of that? Okay. Hi, I'm Roger Knowles in Durban. The wind is howling. The rain's just come up from Cape Town. I speak on dispute resolution and negotiation skills. And Chris, I'm delighted you finally got that up yours going. Great, man.
Very good. Thank you, Roger. Willem Gous.
Good evening. I'm Willem Gous. I'm based in Johannesburg. I speak on innovation and life design for business owners.
Very good. Thank you. Cindy Pavasic.
My name is Cindy Pavasic, as you rightly heard, and you got the spelling, pronunciation right. I speak on HIV and AIDS. I also do PR for self-published author entrepreneurs, which I hope to get a talk going in the new year.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Shelley. Shelley, can you work out how to unmute yourself?
Sign language.
Yes. All right. Shelley, I've unmuted you. Can you? There you go. Shelley, can you speak? All right. That's not going so well. All right. Shelley is waving at us. Shelley, won't you please pop into the chat box and tell us where you are in the country and what it is that you do? And we'll move on to, is it Joke? Joke van Dam?
Must I first wait for Shelley?
No. Shelley's going to type in the text box. You can carry on.
Hi guys, I'm Joke van Dam. I'm based in Johannesburg, and I speak on codependence, the shark, the victim, and the rescuer, a dolphin's guide to healthy relationships.
Very, very interesting. All right. Thank you, Joke. Ross, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Ross Saunders here. I'm from Centurion. I speak on technology, taking the fear out of technology and also how to implement it in your business.
Very good. Thank you, Ross. Annette. Annette Kemp.
Hi, Charlotte. I'm purely into online marketing, no speaking, only listening.
That's a very, very good skill to have. Thank you, Annette. And then here.
Are you speaking? Are you saying something?
I'm trying to get to Ian, who's our next guest. Ian?
This Ian.
Yes, that Ian.
Yeah, I'm getting confused with the speaker. I'm Ian Craig. I'm in Johannesburg. I talk on nutrition and health and lifestyle and basically empowering your own health decisions.
Good. All right, thank you. Let's just, for clarity's sake, move on to the other Ian, and neither of which of you have your surnames, which is why we got confused. So the other Ian, thank you. Can you speak, Ian? Okay. You're unmuted, but we're not hearing you, Ian.
Are you meaning me now, or?
No, the other Ian, the book's behind him. All right, Ian, I'm not sure if there's a problem with your sound, but Ian, if I could ask you, the other Ian with books behind you, can you please go into the chat box as well and just let us know who you are and what it is that you speak on. All right, Chris Vermeulen. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Charlotte. I'm Chris Vermeulen from Pretoria. I always find this question difficult to answer, but you're asking, so I just, ignore this telephone call. Mainly project management and technical report writing, and I help companies to get or become accredited with whichever CETA they need to be accredited with.
Very good. All right. Thank you, Chris. And Chris, we'd just like to congratulate you. Chris is the new business manager for the Professional Speakers Association. We really appreciate the role that you're stepping into, and you have our support for anything that you need to get done.
Thank you very much.
Good. All right. I'm going to go on to Jacques Velleman. Jacques?
Hi, Charlotte. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Yes, my name is Jacques. I'm here in Joburg, and I'm a business coach. I also speak on the topic, unlocking human potential in a digital world.
Very good. Nice topic. Thank you, Jacques. Notion.
Hi, it's Neshan Pillay. I'm a human behavior specialist, and I just started my keynote, and it's titled Positive Thinking, the Cause of Human Suffering.
All right. That was positive thinking. You heard that, the cause of human suffering. And if I get a chance to hear it, at least have a conversation with Notion about that, because that's really fascinating. All right. Thank you. I'm going to move on to Jessica. Hi, Jessica. Jessica, can you unmute yourself? All right, I'm going to unmute you, Jessica. There you go. Can you speak, Jessica?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a coach. So basically, I talk to people about speak. So I help people improve on their ability to speak. So I've just started doing webinars now.
Very good. All right. Welcome. Thank you for joining us, Jessica. Dawn. Hey, Dawn.
Hi. Sorry, I'm just having some fiber challenges today. So I'm an executive and business coach and a professional speaker, and my main focus subject-wise is on helping people unpack their potential for success. I'm in Johannesburg.
All right. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
Our next person is JC Menz. JC? Should I help you? There you go, JC. You need to tell us who you are and where you are in the country and what you speak on.
Can't hear you.
No, we can't hear anything. All right. JC, I'm going to mute you again, ask you just to please make a comment in the chat box for us. And then if we're going to go into Chris Bierman. Hi, Chris, are you there?
Hi, Charlotte. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I'm based in Bloemfontein. Bloemfontein has been struck without water for the last 7 days. So, yeah, I'm quite thirsty here. Normally the guys drink some coffee and wine down in the Cape, but we've got less water than the guys in the Cape. I'm a visually impaired person. I'm basically blind, and I speak about golf and how golf can be used to teach people the principles of success.
Very interesting topic. We do really empathize with you with the water situation, and it seems like there are water crises across the country of different kinds. I hope you get right soon. Bruce Wade, welcome, Bruce. Can you tell us who you are?
Cool. Bruce Wade, aka Superhero Batman, and I'm an innovation coach. We run an innovation accelerator in Cape Town, and I speak on the future of innovation. And my keynote is the 6 realities of our future. And yeah, I do a fair amount of online training, coaching, and as well as workshops and one-on-one coaching.
Very good. Thank you, Bruce. All right. One more person to introduce, and that is Peter with the yellow shirt on. Hi, Peter. I'm going to unmute you. Can you tell us who you are, where you are in the country, and what you speak about, please? Peter? You're speaking, but we're not hearing you. All right. Peter, I'm going to turn your sound off and ask you as well to just make a comment in the chat box for us. The other Ian has said that he's not currently speaking professionally, but he lectures chemistry at Wits. He's presented many youth leadership courses through Toastmasters. I think that was Ian Bratt. And Dawn is having connectivity issues, and Ian is in Boxburg. All right, folks, thank you very much. Just a reminder again about the screen. You can have the speaker view up on the top. You can either have a gallery view or a speaker view. If you put the gallery, then you get to see everybody's picture, which is really great. But Ian is also Ian Hatton, who is our presenter. Wow, 3 Ians tonight. I'll have to concentrate. Ian Hatton is going to share his screen with us just now, and we'll have a bit of a view of that. So let me introduce myself. So I'm Charlotte Kemp. I'm here in Cape Town, and my husband Richard Mulvey is here in just off screen listening in on this conversation with us. And we're very involved in PSA. We really love to get to all of the chapter meetings where we can. And we have this meeting. I'm going to steal just a moment before Ian starts, just to suggest this. We've had a couple of people say that the beginning part of this conversation takes up quite a bit of time from our presenter. And obviously, we do really want to get into the content. But we also know that it's really important to find out who's in the room and to have a bit of engagement. So possibly from next year, we'll relook at this, and we might make this an hour-and-a-half long meeting so that we do have time to have some engagement beforehand. Because we also know that if we don't talk and introduce ourselves, then it's that much more difficult later on for any of you to raise your hand and have a conversation or ask a question. So we'll look at making this meeting a little bit longer. And we also have a couple of other ideas which we'll discuss. But now let me just explain about Ian. Ian, we've met Ian through the Cape chapter of the PSASA, and he has some really interesting things to share. But as often happens, we kind of bump into our colleagues at chapter meetings or maybe at 1 or 2 other events, and we kind of have a vague idea about what they speak about, but we don't take the time to really find out. Now, I'm very fortunate. I've been given the opportunity to host a radio show on internet radio, #radio here in Cape Town. And it means that I interview guests and I get time to sit down and unpack what it is they do. So I've been running through all the interesting people that I know so that I can kind of have a good conversation with them. And Ian was one of our guests. And Ian had so much interesting stuff to share that the minute we finished, I thought, we have to have this conversation again with all of us here at PSA. So that is why I invited Ian back. But I'm going to ask Ian to introduce himself and explain what it is that he does so that so he can give a really good position about what he's going to share with us today and how the session is going to work. So, Ian, over to you.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. It's been great to chat a little bit and to listen to everybody. My name is Ian Hatton. I'm a facilitator, speaker, and coach. I mainly talk about leadership and self-leadership. I do a lot of facilitation work for the Ken Blanchard companies. Many of you would be familiar with them. doing 1 minute manager and situational leadership, that kind of thing. What's happened more recently that makes it very relevant to what we're doing now is they've started selling more and more online facilitation. So what's happened is that we have things like entire training courses being delivered online these days. So just to give you an idea, I trained up about 3 or 4 years ago to start doing this. And I think the first year I did 4 sessions, the next year 15. This year I'm doing over 80. So it just gives you a bit of an idea of how much it's picked up and what sort of happened in that environment. And just one more little thing is that I actually started doing Skype coaching about 12 years ago, coached somebody 20 sessions into Scotland, a New Zealander living in Scotland. Still never met him face to face. And we did some in-depth coaching. We cried, we laughed, we prayed. We had an incredible time together. So yeah, there's a bit of exposure to that kind of thing. I've been doing it for a while. Wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I'd love to share what I can with you this evening. And I'm sure there's stories we can hear from you as well. Good. Should I just jump in then, Charlotte?
Yes, please do.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to share my screen where there is a bit of a PowerPoint presentation. Don't worry, this is not going to be death by bullet point, I promise. But I do have a bit of a structure for you. And so the topic is how to be a professional virtual presenter. We'll see how we do with that topic. And I wanted to start with something fairly simple, I think, which is a very interesting concept. When you're doing online like webinars and things like that, it starts to become a little bit complicated. And this picture is about, do you think you could perhaps play a piano concerto while simultaneously eating a big sandwich? And that's what it sometimes feels like when you're doing online facilitation, is there's this incredible thing of you've got a chat box to look at, you've got a screen, you've got slides coming, you need to know what slide is coming, you need to know where that's all going. You also need to know things like, are people writing on the screen? Are they using any of the other tools to interact? Is anybody being left out of the conversation recently that you need to involve? It becomes quite something when you're doing the bigger ones. The simpler ones, of course, are the face-to-faces, the Skype calls, that kind of thing. But somebody once said that learning to fly a helicopter is like playing a piano concerto and eating a sandwich at the same time. Well, I think sometimes running a webinar is too. So let's get into my agenda very quickly. I want to talk about it being a team sport, and it maybe builds on what I've just said, that it's very difficult sometimes to do some of these things on your own. I'm going to talk about it not being about the technology. Online work is not about the technology. It is about people. I'm going to talk about the technology being critical, though. So a bit of a combination of two thoughts there. I'm going to talk about the myth of multitasking, and I'm going to give you a little test to do. And I'm going to say that attendance is nothing, and I'll talk more about that towards the end. And then, of course, we'll have questions as well. So this is just a little bit of where I want to take you through with this. So let's start about this idea that webinars are team sports. Online work is a team sport. And so I've put this picture up here because Charlotte is actually playing a role, and I want to encourage you to use this, and that is to use the chat box. You do have access to the chat box, and I'd love you to use the chat box as much as possible. We'll get, I hope you've got access while the slide's up. Is that possible? Charlotte, do you know? Okay, so
Sorry.
Yes.
I've had my mute off just in case the ray makes a noise, but it's fine. I'll leave it on silently here.
Okay, good. But people can use the chat box while I'm on the screen share?
Yes, they can, and I can see any comments that they're making at the same time.
Great. So any questions, just pile them into the chat box. Charlotte's going to monitor that. She's going to help us with that so that I don't have to be monitoring that at the same time. And then Charlotte will interrupt if the same question keeps popping up or something really interesting pops up that's relevant. So please feel free to interact. In fact, I want to encourage you, as much interaction as possible would be really, really useful. And so we're teaming up. Yes, Charlotte.
I just want to suggest if people haven't found the chat box, it's down at the bottom of the toolbar. If they hover, they will see it come up, and they click on it and they can just text from there. You can text to everyone so we can all see it. Thank you, Ross. Alt H will also open it. You can chat to anyone, or if you want to just send a private message to somebody else, you can do that. But just be careful of thinking that you're multitasking and don't say anything confidential, because chances are you'll send it to everybody and we'll laugh at you.
Exactly. Thank you, Charlotte. Great stuff. Okay, so we believe that in online teaming, online meetings, there's probably as many as 5 leadership roles, and so I'm just sharing the roles with Charlotte tonight, and she will be helping me because it's pretty much impossible for me to monitor everything at this point. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. So that's my first point. Let me go on to my next point. So my next point is, it's not about the technology. Why? Because it's actually about connecting with people. I think a lot of people are put off doing online work because they are so focused on the technology, that we all forget actually we're in this kind of business for a reason. We like helping people. We like supporting people. And you know what? It's just another medium to do it. And so it's really still about connecting with people. Some of you might have noticed we were chatting a little bit earlier on, lots of laughter, lots of little connection things happening, and it's exactly the same kind of thing that would happen in a classroom. It's the same kind of thing that would happen in a coffee shop. You want to have connection with the people. That is your number one priority. And the idea of the technology is it's just a medium to do so. And so, so I thought it'd be a good time to actually ask a question. Now, we're going to try something, which is there is an annotation tool which we think is open to everybody. Charlotte, do you have any instructions on how to use the annotation tool?
I don't have instructions. I haven't played around with it, so maybe you can help us to experiment.
Okay. So when I go to the top of my screen, there is a little thing which says annotate. And when you click on that, it actually opens a little bar, and you've got all sorts of drawing tools. So, for example, I'm drawing a little circle there, and you've got things like, okay, looks like people have got it. So if you can open that up, what I'd like you to do is when you look at these options here, why do you want to present online? Is it for coaching and mentoring? Is it for online meetings, training facilitation, webinars, conference speaking, or other? And if you're marking other, can you try and type? There is a text tool as part of the annotations, and maybe you can click the text and actually tell us next to other what some of the reasons are that you might be wanting to do online work. Okay. Other work. All right. Okay, so let's have a look. We've got a whole lot of people marking things, lots of coaching and mentoring stuff coming up, online meetings, training facilitation. Okay. And I'm loving the variety of the way people are marking this. This is just such a work of art that's emerging. I love this sort of thing. Okay, so webinars is coming up as well. And then conference speaking, which is a really interesting one. We had an incredible session on that a few months ago, Charlotte, which was just quite mind-boggling for me. And that was really useful. So a lot of conference speaking as well. And then, masterminds, good, facilitation, mastermind meetings, database building. Okay, lots of great things coming through. So thank you for that interaction. Thank you for that feedback. I'll talk more about that a little bit later on. And I love the artwork. Thank you very much for sharing your artwork with us as well. Now, I'm going to continue then with the next point. I'm very mindful of the time. And so I want to just carry on and talk about the next point. So yes, it's about the people, and these are the kinds of people and the ways that you want to meet with them. Thank you for that. Great. So the next one is, we needed to actually save that with the slide, I think. How do we do that? There we go. All right. Let's see if I now move on, if it will give me, I'm now going to delete it off the slide. Okay, we need to clear it. Okay.
But thank you for teaching us something new about Zoom.
Okay, so I'm going to clear all the drawing now for this. Thank you very much. Okay, so just as much as it's all about the people, we do need to master our tools and our setup. So I've got a few points I want to make here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but this is just an example of one particular type of tool. I'll probably talk about this tool a little bit later on. It's called Adobe Connect. And there are many, many tools, from the very simple, more one-on-one like Skype, to this sort of thing like Skype Professional and Zoom, then getting on to the sort of webinar products like WebEx and Adobe Connect, and there are many, many other tools. But you really do need to know your platform. And just to give you an idea over here, you can see there's a chat box, there's polls at the bottom where you can actually select a poll or a design. You can actually be looking at the level of engagement in a meeting using a product like this. So quite sophisticated tools that are available, and you need to choose your platform according to what you're going to be doing. So obviously coaching, you could use Skype or Zoom, and even meetings, but once you're getting to something where you're doing full-on training facilitation, you probably want to be using a tool like this, or if you're doing webinars, either a tool like this or a tool like WebEx. Although WebEx actually has 3 different versions. It has a meeting version, a webinar version, and a training version, all very useful. Okay, so so this is just a little bit about the technology, but furthermore about the technology, I think it's very important to understand that there are other issues like bandwidth. For example, a lot of South Africans still use ADSL. Fiber is nearly overtaken, but hasn't quite overtaken yet, as far as I last saw. And ADSL has a big problem for doing things like this kind of work, in that your upload speed is normally about 1/12 of your download speed. And you're uploading video, then you need a decent upload speed. So even though ADSL works well for receiving, it's not great for transmitting, and therefore can be a problem. And so I actually use, I don't yet have fiber. I've been waiting for nearly a year. It was in the area, but still hasn't got my residence. But we do have very good LTE speeds here. So I'm actually using a high-speed LTE link here to ensure that we get a reasonable quality video upload with what we're doing here tonight. And then the third part of technology or setup is all about the room. Yeah, it's okay sometimes if you've got a bit of movement in the background on a meeting, but once you're getting into serious presenting, you want to almost set up something which is a little bit more studio-like. You want good lighting. You want lighting that comes from the top and a little bit maybe from the one side to give a bit of depth. As you see, I might have done that here. You want to make sure that you don't have dogs barking in the background and things like that, all about the professional setup. So quite a lot of stuff around the setup, and you're welcome to ask questions about how I do it and what I've done. I had some very interesting things where another room in my home, I'm in a block of flats, and there was a dog that used to bark outside the window all the time, and I tried soundproofing the windows and everything. Eventually I gave up and I moved to this room where it's a lot quieter and I don't have that problem anymore. So always another consideration, you don't want to sound like you're running your professional training from a bazaar or something. Okay, good. So that's a little bit about the tools, and that you want nothing to get in the way. I think that's the real point. And you want to maximize engagement, and we'll talk more about that in another slide. Okay, getting there. I think I've got half of my points done. So the next point I wanted to talk about is the myth of multitasking, and I've got work for you to do here. Work for you to do. So let's talk about multitasking, and this is what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to all take out some kind of a stopwatch, whether you have it on your phone, something that can count seconds. And I want you to do a little test on yourself. So this is how it works. I'm going to ask you to, in your head, you mustn't write it down. You can write the time down it takes you, but not the actual exercise. In your heads, count from 1 to 10, followed by the first 10 letters of the alphabet, A to J. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. See how long that takes you, but in your head, not out loud. And then post in the chat box how many seconds, and Charlotte will monitor the chat box and see how many seconds did it take you to do that.
All right, so we got 5 seconds from Bruce Wade. JC, 5 seconds. 4 for Ian. 5.26 from Cindy. Ross missed the instructions while looking for a stopwatch. 6 from Ian. 5.4 from Chris. 4.5 from Notion, who's just a star. Dawn is 6. Thank you, Jan. JC's name is Jan. We got 5.7, we got 4.34, we got 6.4. It's the Scotch Roger. Don't worry, I had 7 seconds. Yeah, I cannot multitask. Not while you're talking, and I'm trying to work this out as well. All right,
So let's just quickly repeat the instruction for Ross. Ross, the instruction is count in your head from 1 to 10, followed by A to J, the first 10 letters of the alphabet. See how quickly you can do that in your head, not writing it down or speaking it out. Okay, so while Ross is doing that, the rest of you, I'm going to give you part B. And part B, and by the way, your timings are very, very normal. Anything between about 3 and 10 seconds is very normal for part A. So part B, the exercise now is this. Do it again, but this time you alternate. You go 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, etc., through to 10J. See how long that takes you.
Yeah. All right. Jan says, he says, oh dear, Notion gave up. Willem is fried. Ross eventually got to 14 seconds. Ian, wow, 6.78 seconds. Yoke is 12 seconds. Dawn, 9. Jacques, Fraklank. All right, very good. Cindy, 16. All right, I don't feel so bad. I kind of like.
So I will confess, the first time I did it, I got lost somewhere and had to restart. And once I restarted, I think I got about 23 seconds. So it's quite common to have anything from about a 50% slower to about a 300% slower when you're doing it the second time. And basically what this is about is, and the neuroscience is extremely clear on this, the human brain cannot multitask attention. It can multitask other things, like you could walk, subconscious things. You could walk and be talking at the same time, that kind of thing. But the moment it's attention, it cannot multitask it. And so what's really happening in your brain, the first time around, you're going one task, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, swap tasks, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Second time, you're going 1, swap task A, swap task 2, swap task B, and so on. And that's what's really happening in the brain. And the latest research not only suggests that it is extremely dangerous. You can be have as much trouble as driving drunk. As it can have a 500% increase or decrease in your attention, 500% increase in the likelihood of having an accident. Your IQ lowers by anything from 10 to 20 points, making you kind of like a preteen IQ. Not only that, but you will see things like productivity dropping from anything from about 20 to 60% when you do try to multitask. Basically, the brain can't multitask. And the whole thing about any online work is to have the attention of the other that they don't multitask. Multitasking is your killer. And really the whole idea is that it's a thing where people, like Bruce eating his supper. And hopefully, Bruce, that's not taking too much of your attention. But people, when you don't see the video of them, they could be doing anything. And really, the whole idea is to get the engagement as high as you can. And here's the most shocking piece of all of the research is the latest one that I saw, and I've actually read 2 on this now, are indicating that there is long-term damage to your brain when you try to multitask. It actually reduces your ability to focus and pay attention. But the more we multitask, and 2 different universities have now been able to prove that there is actually long-term damage to your brain when you're multitasking. So the whole idea is that, if a meeting is boring and people are doing email, the reality is they're not even multitasking. They're actually have checked out of the meeting and they're busy doing email. They're actually not there anymore. And the fact that they show as being online doesn't mean a thing. And really the idea is to get that constant engagement. Great, thank you for your participation on that. I hope that made a lot of sense. And that then leads me to one last thing, which actually flows from that immediately, which is attendance is nothing and participation is everything. Attendance is nothing and participation is everything. So as you've seen that we're doing here, we do have voice, we have video, and I'm going to hear more of your voices again in a moment as I'm wrapping this up. But at the same time, we should be using as many of the interactive tools as possible. So this over here that I'm showing you right now is a screenshot. Oh, it's a horrible shot of me. It's a screenshot of a training I actually completed yesterday into Sweden, believe it or not. I do a lot of international work now. And this was, I try to blank out some of the things about the client because I'm not supposed to show you that. But this is just giving you some ideas. So you can see again interaction on the screen just as we've done. There's a chat box on the left of the screen towards the top, which is where we are doing a lot of the chat. Then at the bottom below that, we've got a secondary chat box, which is messages addressed to what we call the producer. Now, Charlotte is playing the producer role for us today. And so that would be where you've got a technical problem, somebody who's battling with their microphone or so on. You could actually have a producer who's actually helping with that a lot. And then below my video on the right, you've got where you see all the participants listed over there, and what they will actually show you there is they can open and close their microphone, obviously, but they can do things like raise their hand, tell you that they've got a question, tell you to slow down, speed up. They can put a laughing icon up, they can put an applause icon up, but these are other indicators that we can use. And so effectively, I think we end up with 5 different ways that people can interact. They can write on the screen, they can chat in the box, they can use video, they can use voice, and they can use these signals of raising hands and things like that, which I think even you have that option on Zoom. So you really do want to have maximum participation. And the lovely saying that we use is not just that participation is everything, but that in fact you want as a facilitator some level of interaction at least every 5 minutes from your audience. You want to keep asking questions, you want people to be putting things in the chat box, you want to be doing things like getting a response on a screen or something like that. So that, yes.
Just before we carry on, we have had some people really, very interested in the research that you talked about not doing multitasking.
Okay, so if you Google, does multitasking damage your brain? You will find it immediately. And if you Google, does multitasking work? You will find it immediately. There's Harvard Business Review articles. There's a few different university articles, and I will be giving my email address at the end. If you need more than that, you pop me an email, and I have, I think, about 5 different links to articles around multitasking.
Good, because both Koos and Willem are going to take this knowledge and research to their wives. I'd like to be around when they have those conversations.
I'm taking no responsibility for divorce proceedings.
Good, good. And Chris Vermeulen has asked, what is the cost of Adobe Connect?
I actually do not know that. In this particular case, the client is fitting the bill, and it may be useful just to have a look online. And Chris, if you don't come right with that, just pop me a message, and I will try and find out as well. I do remember researching all the WebEx costs, and I'm sure it's in a similar sort of ballpark, but I don't know the cost of Adobe Connect. I haven't ever seen. I know a few clients who are using it very successfully.
Yeah, I would just kind of jump in as well and say, I've only been a participant on Adobe Connect. I'm a student member of the Association of Professional Futurists, and they connect with all of their new members using online tools. So the first couple of times we connected, they used Adobe Connect, and I was really blown away. And then they have now moved on to Zoom. And I don't think it's a financial thing. I think they really just find that Zoom is more engaging. And it has a lot of the tools. So Adobe Connect has got some extra special tools. You can go into separate rooms, for example. But I think let's really squeeze the value out of Zoom before we pony up for Adobe Connect. We are paying for the professional version of Zoom for these meetings. It allows us to have a longer meeting. But before you do that, you can use Zoom for free. And I think most of the tools are available, but you can use it for free for up to 45 minutes. So go ahead and experiment like crazy. And then once you know that you can make this work, then you can step up. Notion is saying that there are different packages and Ross, who has a lot of experience with technical things, he says that the comments are disappearing, going up the screen. So Ross was saying Microsoft has got something similar. Do we know if Microsoft has got something similar? Ian?
So I've done some training where I actually had, prior to Adobe Connect with this client, we had the product that they were using go down completely. And this is the kind of be ready for anything version of online training. And so we jumped across and we used Link, which is a Microsoft product, which has now become Skype for Business. And Link was actually quite successful. We had a really good interactive meeting. But it's really horses for courses. Are we really clear about that? What Charlotte just said about something where you're doing these sort of online meetings like you've been doing, I think Zoom might actually be a better product. Where something like Adobe Connect comes into its own is where you're doing structured training where, for example, I'm doing a rollout where in one company, it's a global company, I've probably already trained about 30 groups of people. And it's the same product over and over again, and we then have the same layout and the same method and the same slides and all of that kind of thing, and we're doing it over and over again. So we set that up nicely in Adobe Connect, and then we just keep reusing it. Whereas when you're doing something like we're doing here, where it's interactive and we've got a new different presenter every month, I think Zoom is quite adequate and does a great job and is highly interactive. So I think that's great.
Okay, I'm just going to answer a question here, then I'm going to give it back to Ian to ask questions, which we're already doing. We jumped again. A couple of people have asked me, we've been talking here in the chat box about Webinar Jam and some of the other tools, and people are asking about the cost of Zoom Professional, and it's about 240 Rand a month. Obviously, we're paying in dollars, so that kind of changes a little bit. 240 Rand, and it's not per session, so it's a monthly fee. I use Zoom quite a lot. I interview a lot of people for either the radio show or for a book that I'm writing, and then I record those sessions and I put them up onto YouTube, and it's really powerful. And also, what I just had was I have a account manager at Zoom, so he set up a session with me as well, just to make sure that we went through things. Unfortunately, I missed the meeting, so otherwise I could have asked him some of the other tools that we should be using. But we need to experiment and play with these tools quite a bit. Bruce Wade says he's been using Expertise TV for about a year and has great success with webinars and coaching. All right, Ian, so you want to actually say we can have questions now?
Yeah, let's go, Matt. I realized there was one thing I hadn't spoken about, and that is doing online work, which keeps coming up as a question. So I want to preempt it in case it doesn't come up. Is about what do you charge? And I want to be really clear. Just because you're doing the work online does not mean that the client gets any kind of a discount whatsoever. You already have to have the expertise and setup of the right equipment, and by the way, they should be paying if it's something like Adobe Connect, I really think. But when it comes to the actual time that you're spending, it's incredibly intense. I find if I can do a maximum of 3 hour-and-a-half sessions, 3 90-minute sessions in a day, and then I am completely paced because it's taken absolutely everything out of me in terms of my focus, my mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever you want to call it, giving out to the people and being extremely attentive. So you should be paid a full day's work for that sort of thing. And same for any online speeches or anything like that. The price does not change because it's online at all. The savings are in travel costs.
Very good.
And travel time.
Ian, can I ask you just to unshare your screen? No longer share.
Sorry, I should have done that already. Yeah. Here we go.
All right, let me see everyone's faces. And then if we have questions, obviously you can still pop them into the box if you want to, but otherwise raise your hand physically or find the raise your hand button, and we'll take some questions like that. Dawn is asking, Ian, what connectivity do you have? I assume it's fiber, 10 megabits per second or higher, but Ian said he didn't have fiber yet. It was LTE. Yeah.
So I'm currently using LTE. I use both MTN and Telkom just in case. I've got both of them, and my LTE where I live is a 20 meg, typically a 20 meg download and a 4 or 5 meg upload, which seems to be adequate. But if I was on fiber, I would probably go for at least a 10 meg upload and probably a 50 or more download for doing this kind of work professionally. But right now, because of most of my clients having limited bandwidth, and I've had no problem. And by the way, you see the difference. I do work into Europe, and when we do breakout sessions, then they go into breakout sessions and they can all see each other in the video. The moment they do that, when the bandwidth is great, they have TV quality, interactions in their breakout sessions. Whereas across Africa, it's a little bit different.
All right. I'm going to just raise Bruce's question. Bruce Wade in the text box has said, how do we move from the assumption of no fees for remote speakers? Now, I know you've just kind of addressed that, but how do we, what is the argument? How do we go about negotiating with organizers to let them know how much work goes into this?
Yeah, for me, I think very simply, the only difference, if there is any, is in the travel time. The preparation time, the setup time, the cost of setting up effectively a studio in your home, and all of that, you've got to cover that yourself. And then in terms of the actual work that you put in, everything that's made you who you are, all of your learning, everything over the years, all of that is valid. There's actually no difference in terms of what you put in when you are doing it online versus face-to-face. I actually find face-to-face, in fact, it's also a little bit more intense in that a quantity of material, what I can get through online in about 4 hours, probably would take me just about a full day in a face-to-face environment. There's something about it where you can just be that much more focused. Yeah, so I don't know. I just there's no difference in what you're putting in, and therefore there should be no difference in what you're being paid.
Yeah, very good. Ian, Jan has got a good question. He says, are there any comments that you have on pre-recorded videos and audio? Let's say that you don't have a team to assist you during the webinar.
So for me, it comes back to this multitasking and interactive thing. So if the subject is something where the participants will be very, very attentive and it's their subject, then maybe a pre-recorded thing would work quite well. I've also heard it working quite well, especially as a backup for conference speaking and that kind of thing. But for me, the real skill is in the interaction. So the setup would be the same. You would still need to spend good money on making sure you've got a good microphone, headset, or whichever method you're going to be using. I use the headset not because it's better, but because, well, it's definitely better than the built-in microphones. So I don't go more built-in at all. But it's being so close to my mouth, it gets less of the dogs barking in the background because my room isn't completely soundproof. If I had a completely soundproof room, I'd probably use a product like a Snowball, which is a great microphone, a great condenser microphone that works brilliantly. So yeah, you still need all of that set up for the pre-recording type stuff, and I think it's a really good plan B. But I couldn't see, for example, in a training that something pre-recorded that is, like a 2 days worth of training, that people would even get through it. I just think you'd lose them. They would be doing email and stuff, and it would kind of be running in the background, and I don't think you'd get the same value. I happen to know Jan is a university lecturer, and he does occasional little sort of almost podcast type things that I think could work pre-recorded. But actual training and interactive stuff, no chance.
Yeah, when there's the option of something has been recorded, it's always, we'll watch it later. And very often we don't get around to that. So having this commitment of, personal time is what actually, it's a commitment device. It actually gets us to appear and get involved. Good. Willem's also asked, how do you market your services and how successful is it?
So in many ways, it's exactly the same way as anything else. I'm not doing anything different again. It's simply giving clients the option that if they do want to do it over technology, that is an option. So for example, it's really about the appropriateness for the client. This global client that I'm working with at the moment, they actually function virtually themselves. So pretty much every member of the organization is some sort of a member of multiple virtual teams or leading multiple virtual teams. And so they wanted a virtual delivery of a virtual leadership program. And of course, virtual leadership is still real leadership because it's real people, but it's just delivered over technology. And so it's really the appropriateness of it, and of course the cost savings. I mean, I, for example, have regularly done training in Ghana, and they fly people from all over West Africa to come along to that training, from Nigeria and Congo and Cote d'Ivoire and so on. And there's tremendous costs, accommodation costs, disruption costs. So doing that kind of thing into that environment saves them not just the facilitator travel cost, but often participant travel costs as well. And so really it's about that sort of effectiveness.
Yeah.
I'll give you one more example of one thing that worked very well that is an advantage of the virtual over face-to-face, is in a very, very busy client. They wanted to do 3 sessions over 3 days of an hour and a half each, or 2 hours each. So we did 6 hours of work. So it's kind of a full day's work. Did it over 3 2-hour sessions, one a day for 3 days. Now, if they were having me face-to-face, they would be paying for 3 days of full facilitation, but they, wanted it that way. And then I charge per session, so it's kind of a third of a day's work kind of thing over 3 days. Now, obviously, I could be losing out there, but it gives me time to do other things, still based right here. So, yeah. So those are so otherwise it's the same. You're still marketing who you are. You're presenting who you are, your experience, your essence, your being.
Yes. I wanted to comment earlier on when you were talking about, connecting with people, and it's, the technology element is important, but it really is about the people. I had an experience a little while ago. I'm connected with somebody in Nigeria, and she wanted me to present to, a few people in her network about some issues about LinkedIn. And I'm afraid I did not prepare myself properly, because we eventually got into the session and there was a confusion about time. So eventually this took me the whole day to do it, but they were expecting it in the afternoon and I was ready in the morning. But we sit down and do it, and then she says, Charlotte will present for an hour and then we'll have an hour Q&A. Like, I had not prepared for 2 hours of presentation, because I haven't had that experience yet and I wasn't quite set up for it. But we also then had incredibly bad internet connection. So I think the technology part really is important. And I know there's a lot of technology questions here. I think we really need to kind of research that and work it out for ourselves and practice. But in this case, I had 2 computers. We had 3 different internet connections, and I still could not get a stable, good connection with all these people. And it turned out not to be a handful of people. I think about 50 or 60 people were on this call. It was a Zoom call and really was hosting 60 people. And they weren't all just in Nigeria. They were across Europe as well. And I was feeling so embarrassed that our connection kept dropping and I kept losing, my video, or I couldn't speak to them, or there were delays. And the more embarrassed I got, the kind of worse the situation was. Now, one of the things we were taught by Alan Stevens when he did this kind of session with us a couple of months ago was you need to have a back channel talking to the other person. So I'm busy messaging the person who's organized this, and I'm saying, I'm so sorry. I can go and do a video and I'll send it to you, or I'll talk to some of your people one-on-one. And she says to me, don't worry, we're Nigerians, we're very patient, we'll wait for you. And it was such a relief, take a deep breath. And, they knew that what I had to share was valuable and they were prepared to wait. And rather than getting myself all whipped out about it, just to actually appreciate that, we know our technologies are not necessarily as world-class as we'd like them to be. But it's more about, once you have that human connection, then you're forgiven for a lot of those things. So related to that, Jan has asked, is there an upper limit to the participants given the importance of participant engagement?
I think, again, it depends on what you're doing. Webinars, I've seen them successfully done with about 300-400 people, quite successful, and that works very well. You still need some kind of things, for example, do polls where it'll aggregate the information. So you may not be able to get all the voices, you may not be able to get them drawing on the screen, but they can click on a poll. So you can keep asking polls sort of 3 times during an hour presentation, and that then draws up graphs and you're getting information back. And so you can still get quite interactive when it's many, many people. It's just the type of interactivity then changes. Whereas when you're doing something more intimate, like we do in classroom training, then yeah, thanks, Roger. Interesting. That it gets quite tricky. You can't obviously handle all of the questions. And again, the more the people, the more people that you'll need in the terms of production or producers, we call them, like Charlotte has been playing for us today.
Yeah. All right, there are some other questions here, but we're also about to hit our time limit. I just want to make one comment about those questions and those engagements. They are so important. It really is valuable to have people answer valid questions. But I've sat on webinars where people have said, you know, the whole point of the webinar, I'm going to teach you this great, you know, technique. And then, you know, a whole lot of jabber for 15, 20 minutes talking about building up their credibility and everything. And you just know that they're pre-selling something that they're going to pitch to you at the end. And then they say, all right, so now here's the thing. Here's what I'm going to share with you. So please type in the text box. If you type in the text box, I'll tell you what it is. And it's like, that's really a lame question. You know, we're here for that. Don't play with us. So I think the questions and your engagement in with the slide and with the multitasking question, those are valid engagements. So let's try and be a bit real and not be contrived with these questions. It'll go a long way to making webinars and online work a lot more credible for other people.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I can quickly just handle 1 or 2 very quickly. Ross, between 1 and 2 gig a day, if I've done about 4 to 6 hours worth of work, between 1 and 2 gig a day. So it's not a total disaster. And then in terms of, I don't have a standard template or way of preparing. I do have a sort of setup process where I make sure my updates are run on my computer and I reboot the computer the day before or the morning before and, you know, run everything, stop Skype so that I've only got the tool I'm using up. You know, there's a whole lot of that sort of setup routine that I have, but it's again custom for every client in terms of content.
Very good. All right. Ian, thank you. That has been incredibly valuable. I'm sure that there are lots of questions. Willem has to run, and Willem, it was nice meeting all of your children as well. But we get to share. It's lovely. But Ian, thank you. That really has been incredibly valuable and helpful. And I'm sure people will have some questions, and maybe they can just pop you an email. But I think it is certainly something that we need to explore a great deal more. And it keeps coming up in conversations with different people how important these virtual issues are. I'm going to, like I said earlier, I'm going to suggest that we have longer meetings from next year. But one other thing I'm going to suggest is that there are a number of people who don't get to our regular in-person meetings in our major centers. And what might be valuable is if we have maybe get together and have some sort of a virtual online mastermind meeting. We set up a number of speaker masterminds here in Cape Town. They are incredibly valuable. So if anybody's interested in being part of an online mastermind where we can not only join as speakers and learn some stuff from each other, but we can also use these tools and get more familiar and comfortable with them, then it becomes a tool that we can add into our toolbox when we are talking to clients. So let me know. I'll send out an email about that as well, and we'll follow that up. But I think that would be really worthwhile. Good.
Yeah. So can I just quickly, in closing, Charlotte, just very briefly say, we've just skimmed the surface. I mean, I could have done days on this, and I just tried to give a kind of, you know, almost like a TED Talk or something. And I put my email address in the chat box now, ian@totallyian.com. So you are welcome if you have further questions to get in touch with me.
Fantastic. Ian, thank you so much. And a hi to Nikki and to Hannah, who joined us after we said hello to everybody else. But it's good to see you on the calls as well. All right, folks, thank you. We're going to wrap up just so we can keep to the commitment of this hour. But Nikki loves online meetings. Good, Nikki. But yes, so we'll follow up with some emails and we'll make some plans. I think this is probably our last meeting for this year. But early next year, make sure that you look out for our next meetings. But in the meantime, we certainly can get together if some people are willing to explore some online mastermind. All right, folks, thank you very much. Thank you for being with us. Ian, you are a star. You've delivered again. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you.